My name's Ken Wilson. I want to run down what happened to me with Navajo County. I originally had a few trucks down here in the valley in Apache Junction, and to be exact, 4 trucks, semi-trucks. And we transported dry products, produce, meat, frozen, whatever we could haul through the brokers. We rented a lot in AJ, and then we started getting tickets because of noise. The reefers running at night when the drivers would come back in, they had to leave them on because you might have a load of ice cream or meat. So we started getting tickets and harassed by the city. So I thought, well, I'm not going to Phoenix because that's out of our way. And then I looked to rent some places way out there, Gold Canyon, and it was more of a hassle than anything because DPS is constantly running that road, and you watch them pull over semi-trucks one after another because it's big revenue. If they got a tire that has a little slit in it that means nothing to the truck and it ain't going to hurt anybody, they write them a $500 ticket. If you got an issue with the logbook 5 minutes off, they get a $500 ticket. It's all big money tickets, and that's how they generate the revenue. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They're just generating revenue. And they got to the point where they was pulling people left and right. So I said, no, I can't afford it. So then a buddy of mine, which is lives up in Snowflake, I talked to him and he said, hey, there's places up there you can rent, man, and it'll be like just a place for you to park the trucks and a yard. You can put a fuel tank there and buy fuel, have it delivered in bulk, so it's cheaper on you. And it's midpoint because we were hauling a lot of potatoes out of New Mexico down to Casa Grande, Frito-Lay potato chips. So I thought about it. I thought, that's right there on the way, and it really is. It's a perfect shot. It's in the middle. So the guys could come in and fuel. If they want to stay the night and deliver the next morning, they could do that. Just sleep at the yard in the truck because they got sleepers. And so that's what I did. I went up and looked, found a place, and then I...
was this in Snowflake?
It was outside of Snowflake.
Okay.
About, I guess, 5 miles out of town. So it's away from everybody. It was a sawmill, and it was called Smith Molding. Well, when I got up there, then I met another guy there that lived in a trailer right next to it, and his name was Sammy. And then he started telling me he had a buddy down in Phoenix that owned a big junkyard, and he was going around the reservation buying cars and wanted to know if I could haul some cars for him. I said, yeah, I got trucks. We can haul cars. And so then they started bringing the cars up there, and I had been down to Phoenix to deliver a load of cars first for him to Hendricks Salvage. And I took that load of cars in, and I didn't personally do it, but Daryl did, one of the guys that worked for me but was also a good friend at the time. And anyway, he took the load down there and picked up a check for these guys when he delivered the load of cars. And then he seen the loader there that Hendricks had. There was no wiring in it whatsoever. It was a 920 wheel loader. No batteries, there was nothing. The brakes weren't any good on it. I've got $7,000 worth of receipts that I could produce. I actually got proof of the guy, he still lives in Snowflake, that fixed it and charged me that much money. And he knew what was wrong with it. So I can produce the proof to that. Anyway, I went down and looked at it, purchased it from Ronnie Hendricks, and he charged me the price of scrap, which I thought was pretty fair. Anyway, that same invoice that he gave me for the loader, that's when I first started actually dealing with Hendrix.
Buying vehicles?
But yeah, buying equipment or vehicles. And he sent that up to me. He had it delivered to me from one of his own drivers and truck. It said Hendrix salvage right on the side of the truck. Well, when he delivered that, it didn't run. So we had to use a big forklift that belonged to Smith Molding to get it off the truck. And the truck was blocking the driveway when the owners were coming to work, and they distinctly seen it blocking the driveway. And the cops managed, when they interviewed them, they never managed to ask them none of that. And I still to this day don't know if they actually gave that information, but they know it's absolutely true that Hendrix was blocking that driveway and delivered the loader to me. But the cops kindly left that out of the police report. And they tried to say that, make it look like I hauled it up there and picked it up myself. And the only problem is I have a computer generated receipt that it came from Hendrix Salvage. Had no idea it was stolen. But they charged me with it.
So it was a stolen vehicle?
It was stolen loader, yeah. Mm. Well, and at the time, the guy that was fixing it, I said to him on several occasions, hey, you need to make damn sure this loader, because I'm kind of leery, you know, and I really was. I said, you need to check this loader for me. Oh yeah, no, anytime Caterpillar takes the number, they can tell you if it's stolen or anything, the history on it. I said, well...
So it was a cat?
Yeah, it was a cat. And I said, well, that's what I want to know, is give me the history on it. So he checked out and said, no, man, it didn't come up. There's nothing wrong with it. Because I didn't want to sink my money into something and find out later, because I just looked at it and I thought, you know, it just, the price of it, I guess, is what got me, because of the price. And then I found out people were just selling tons of scrap because the market was real high at the time, where scrap was going really big money. And I thought, well, it didn't run, so I didn't know. Then he told me the turbo was out on it, and it had a bad rod in it. And then that made sense. Okay, that's why they got rid of it. So, dropped the oil pan, put new rod in it, and pulled the head on it. We did some work there. We changed the turbo. I don't remember everything. That's what he told me he did. I didn't actually watch the work take place, but I know after he got it running, the brakes didn't work, so he had to fix those. And then it didn't have, the glass was all busted out of it. I had to replace glass, and then we cleaned it all up, put it all back together because pieces were missing. I went and gathered up parts for it. And that's how our relationship started with Hendrix. Well, now I had a loader. So the guy that was buying cars off the reservation, which was Aurelia Auto Sales, off of Broadway.
What city's that?
Phoenix.
Phoenix?
Yeah. And he was buying junk cars and crushing them. So they'd bring them and I'd use the loader and crush them. They had the titles, all legal documents. Everything that was brought in, I personally looked at the titles. Those got shipped down to the salvage companies, and so I started buying cars. And I bought probably 250 cars from everywhere. New Mexico. I bought some old cattle trailers that were just totally trashed. Rollovers. There was one that was rusted out real bad. The floor was steel, but the frame was aluminum. And then I bought some old dump trailers that were trashed. And scrapping them. Trying to make money on scrap because it was real high. Aluminum and steel. And then I started buying old trucks from him. Some of them didn't run. Some was wrecked. Rollovers that he had at his yard. And then some were running that just needed work. Transmission, a rear end, or it might have been a turbo. There was a lot of trucks that were purchased. So we'd buy them for a decent price, and then I'd bring them up there. repair them, and the ones that with too much money to repair, of course, Daryl. You got to understand how that worked. Daryl had his own little thing he was doing with Hendrix, and then what I was purchasing from Hendrix.
And who's Daryl?
He was my co-defendant.
Okay.
Him and my son started going down to Hendrix more, and they came back with a newer Peterbilt and asked me to borrow $20,000. Well, at the time they were borrowing money from me for the stuff they was buying, and my stuff was over. If you drive down in between the buildings, one side they were using and one side I was using. Of course, they put stuff with mine whenever they didn't have room, and I was doing body work and other things as well. So they showed up with that truck and a trailer that had a big old rip down the inside of the trailer, all the way down it. So I knew that was a rollover. I'm not stupid. But the truck I had a question about. So I went to Daryl and I said, what's going on with that truck and where'd you get it? He said, we got it from Hendrix. I said, what's wrong with it? He said, oh no, it won't stay running though. It keeps quitting on you. And I said, so what did you pay for it? He said, he wants 20 grand. We haven't paid him yet. I was going to see if we could borrow the money to go purchase it. And I said, let me take a look at it. So I went over and looked at it, and I remember distinctly looking at the motor, and there was damage to the motor. Quite a bit of damage, as a matter of fact. It looked like to me that they had hit something in the front end, because the front end was smashed. But I knew I could fix that, but they did damage to the fan and the housing, and the pump, all kind of. There was front end damage. I don't distinctly remember everything, and then the computer was messed up, which is a couple $1,000s. So I loaned them the money. They went and purchased it, and then I started working on some other equipment that I had bought from him, older stuff, and I was scrapping it and saving the tanks, and so we purchased them like $6,000, $7,000, whatever the prices were, which I'd have to go over all the legal documents of it all and look at it and tell you what we paid for it, what truck it was, and anyway.
So they were getting all these cars from Hendrix, and some were stolen?
Yes. My son and Daryl actually went, later I found out how it came about was later on, actually a week before the cops showed up, I found out some information from Daryl, because Daryl came to me and said, hey Ken, I got to level with you, man, and I don't want you in trouble for this crap. And I said, what'd you do? And he said, listen, you got to get out of here. I said, what did you do? And that's when he told me. They were actually hauling Hendrix's nephew to different states in my trucks, dropping him off, and they would steal trucks, bring them back to Hendrix yard, and then sell those like they were total trucks or scrap metal trucks, and we could only part them out. So that's when I basically heard the whole damn story. And
so Daryl was actively doing it?
Yeah.
With Hendrix and Hendrix's son?
His cousin. Hendrix's cousin. And my son. And Troy would go with Daryl and then get out, steal a truck, and bring it back to Hendrix, and then would clean it, and then Daryl would call me and say, can I borrow some money? And then what he would do is pay off Hendrix, because they could make money on the truck itself, parts and scrap, which would make them a profit, and pay back what they borrowed from me. but I wasn't aware of it until the actual end of when everybody got busted. So I I went and looked for a place to rent. I was freaking out. I couldn't afford that, and couldn't afford to be involved in something like that. So I found another place to rent, and me and one kid that was working for me, his name was Cord, decided we were moving. So I started packing my stuff and moving it to this other place. I was making arrangements with this guy. Now, mind you, I still didn't know the loader was stolen. I had fear about it now because of everything else. And anyway, Todd Hamlin, which he died, he was involved up to his ears. He was delivering guns to the cartel at the time. I found that out later too. And
was this during the Fast and Furious gun delivery to Mexico?
Well, it was during. Let me tell you, it was it was happening in 07 and 08 for sure. And what's really strange about it, when they served a search warrant on his property, them fools went in after a bunch of stupid old trucks and equipment, and right underneath their feet was probably about $200,000 worth of high-powered weapons. Right under their feet. No joke. It was buried. I didn't even know about this until after, later on, when Daryl disclosed a lot of things to me and told me what really went on. And so the cops were walking across it the whole time. That just tells you who you got working for your tax dollars, and the job they do. Because if they'd have just dug a little bit, they would have been shocked. Then they would have known the truth about what really happened. But of course, they didn't want the truth. They just wanted to make themselves look good over a few vehicles and, oh, look what we did. We busted a big chop shop. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so Todd Hamlin was delivering guns to the cartel, and then, of course, he was helping them steal the trucks, and I had no clue about that. Didn't even know it. When I finally got indicted, and when I say indicted, my co-defendant got the indictment, but I was aware of it because he called me and said, hey, you're on the indictment. I just got indicted. And I'm like, Daryl, you got me in trouble. You got to clean this up. So, anyway, that's when he gave his interview that they said never took place. And we can prove it took place, absolutely. And they're such idiots, man.
And this is the interview where he specifically said that he was the one guilty and you had no idea what was going on.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. They're so stupid because we also have a recording. When Daryl went to the interview, he sat down and them idiots didn't know he had a tape recorder on his person. So he recorded the same interview that they did. And that's why we all know they're absolutely full of crap and they're liars. And they hid discovery, and we can prove that. So that's the crucial part of this whole thing, is that one incident that shows, yeah, they're liars. and once you show they're lying, then you know they've lied about everything else. But absolutely, Dan Healy is on the recording, Detective McNutley, Alan LeBeau, and Daryl. It's on the recording. Daryl brought it back to me and let me listen to it. He said, you know what? I don't trust that LeBeau. That's why I took my recorder, Ken, because that guy there keeps telling me to dump it all on your lap, and I could get myself out of trouble. And I told him, I'm not a damn liar, and I'm not putting it off on Ken. He didn't have nothing to do with it. And I heard that on the recording. So I was like, Daryl, man, because, I had a felony in my past, so they were going to use that against me, and Daryl didn't. So it made things simpler for his attorney to clear him because he was, clean. Clean because he never been busted. Let's get that straight. Anyway,
So at this point, you had no idea too that these guys were
No.
crooked, right?
No.
Your son.
I had no idea they were doing that. Did I know they were dismantling without dismantling permits? Yeah. And I didn't care. I mean, you know what? Everybody takes a junk car and dismantles without a permit. You know, and that ain't a felony. You know, that's a misdemeanor. So, and I don't care. You know, I didn't care if they charged me for friggin' mister. Go ahead. I'm not paying you $75 a car when I'm only going to make $150. You know, I mean, that's stupid. It's not. It's been paid for how many times? And it's scrap metal. So let's be honest. I mean.
So then they come and they arrest you. How did the arrest go down?
It actually was kind of strange. I was up at the property and I left there and came back home, and then I got a call because they moved a lot of stuff out to Todd's place, and then I got a call from Todd saying, "Hey, DPS is raiding my place," and I went, "Oh my God!" So I waited, and they finally hit the house, busted in my door, and there again I got an autistic child in the house, and they knew that because the cop, he knows my daughter and stuff, and he knows the situation, and he still busted in the door, and the whole thing about that was that he didn't have to bust in the door, and they knew that because they knew there's no weapons in the house. They knew that for a fact. It was just to look like they were tough, and anyway.
Was it SWAT?
DPS, theft task force, you know. Let's be macho and go kick in some doors and make our public look like we're doing our job and we're tough, you know, when they're nothing but a bunch of rollover wet flower punks.
Fearmonger bitches.
Yeah, that's basically what they are. They try to put fear in everybody, and look at them. They were rejected in school, beat up, pushed around. So the only place they can find authority over anybody is go be a cop and put a badge on. Instead of doing it as a human and saying, you know what, I'm here to help the public. I want to help everybody in the public. And don't get me wrong, there's some good ones, but the good are less than the bad. They're outnumbered bad.
And they're squeezed out by the bad.
Exactly, they're pushed out. He just had to do it, you know what I mean, and put it on somebody. So, and he didn't want to look at the real people. And I knew they were tied with Hendrix, because when I see Hendrix trucks, they're all up in the town of Phoenix, Maricopa. They got contracts with the city, and they're tied in close to. So when I told him this story about Hendrix and everything, here's what's really crazy about it. So in 2013, now remember I told him about this in 2009. 2013, Hendrix gets busted with $1.5 million worth of stolen property.
Good evening, Arizona. I'm Carrie Pena.
And I'm Fields Mosley. We are learning more tonight about a statewide operation cracking down on stolen cars.
Christine Harrington live in Phoenix with more on this developing news tonight. Christine?
Yeah, you guys, it's obvious that law enforcement agencies are always involved in investigating auto theft, but it should come as no surprise that insurance companies, too, have a vested interest in having these crimes solved. So again, that explains why insurance companies stepped up and played a major role in the takedown of this alleged crime syndicate.
They're looking for metal. They're looking for scrap metal. Any and all scrap metal that is brought in is what they're looking for.
And with the price of metals soaring,
Oh, it is big business.
Hendrix Salvage and Recycling has been operating in Arizona for decades. But for the last couple years, authorities say the business served as a front for the illegal sale of metal scrapped from stolen cars. Bob Owens with the National Insurance Crime Bureau is familiar with the scheme.
If it goes in a salvage yard somewhere, within 2 minutes, it's in pieces. You'll never get the vehicle back.
So Phoenix police recruited NICB's help a little over a year ago while trying to infiltrate and dismantle the alleged Hendrix crime syndicate.
No other way to get in there. That's the only way to get in there. You got to have salvage. You got to have cars.
So Bob went straight to the insurance companies and got 8 of them to donate some 60 vehicles used in Operation Tin Man. Some of them were totaled or burned out vehicles, others stolen vehicles that had been recovered after claims were settled. And Matt Reed with State Farm Insurance says they were happy to help.
We're curtailing the demand that there might be for stolen vehicles and scrap metal, like air conditioning units, things like that are being stripped out of houses. So that creates fewer claims, which in turn helps us control premiums for our consumers.
As a result of this joint law enforcement investigation, 18 people have been arrested, facing some 55 different felony counts, ranging from drugs to conspiracy, fraud, and trafficking in stolen property. Bob Owens says,
If it wasn't for the insurance industry, the investigation would have never gone down, because law enforcement doesn't have access to vehicles.
And while multiple people have been indicted in this case, the investigation is ongoing. We reached out to those people working here at this particular Hendricks operation site in South Phoenix, and they all here declined comment. We also reached out to the family attorney, but
stolen cars and trucks, and they're tied all together. Hendricks Salvage and Hendricks LLC, they're all tied together. So they cleaned up their yards, they changed their computer system, they did all kinds of crap. And I'm telling
Are they still working for the city?
yeah. Yep. Isn't that amazing? Phoenix. Anyway, they cleaned up their act because the Hendricks the yard where I said the equipment came from, they never did actually go hit them with a search warrant. Didn't touch them. They did their other yards that they know they're linked to, because they're Hendricks as well. Just for family members, but they provided the money. Do you follow what I'm saying? To start. And then they started intermingling with stolen property from one to the other. And Hendricks, Ronnie Hendricks would buy this stolen scrap and stuff and then send it to that Hendricks who processed it and then load it on trucks into other countries, so to speak. They would send them out in containers to China. And, big organization. Probably one of the biggest corrupt organizations ever. And they let it slip. They had a whole yard full of stolen property on the... they own this whole dirt road. And it's all yards in these on this dirt road in Phoenix. And one yard that's got a big metal fence around it was full of air conditioning units that were stolen off of schools and closed down buildings. And I knew this for a fact because I seen them on semi-trailers. And I got to thinking, because then the following week I seen on the news that air conditionings were being stolen left and right. And I said, that's them. That's got to be them. Could I prove it? No. But one of the guys that came in and sold 2 big old refrigeration units to them, and they put them in that yard. What does that tell you? I mean, it's not a genius to figure out they're stolen. And I told the cop about it. I said, listen, man, this came from them, and I've got proof. I've got documentation. Well, I said, it's in all the stuff you took out of my home on the search warrant. Let me go through it and give me copies of it. I said, just give me copies of everything. I'll show you. Well, going back to his statement on the stand, he said there was never no briefcase with titles and documents, but on the search warrant it clearly states a briefcase full of titles and legal documents. But yet, he says, oh, there was never one. So that just tells you the lie after lie. But if you go to a police officer and look, or any cop, the first thing they're taught is to lie. How could they bust anybody if they didn't lie? I mean, so... after so long of lying, they become a liar. They can't separate the two. They don't know how. They start to lie to their family, their wives, it's ridiculous. And their training now is not like it was old school. Old school, they literally had to be trained proper and had to learn a lot to be a cop. And that's what happened to this whole country, but that's a different issue totally. Fundamentals. But going on with mine, so then I get arrested. I go, well, here's how it happened. I go to court, all my court hearings, and on my arraignment, when I went up for arraignment, they had no paperwork. Yeah, for my arraignment, they didn't even know what to arraign me on. So the judge says, okay, you're arraigned on several or multiple counts of felonies. And I'm like, okay. And he said, make sure you appear on this next court. Okay. So I laughed, and me and my attorney, she sent notice in for me not to appear. So then we got notice back that I didn't have to appear at any further proceedings. Until otherwise notice was given. Well, notice was never given. My attorney will testify that. She never got notice.
Like you said earlier, you've never been indicted yet.
No. And we went through the whole file, and it was never in there, notice for me to appear. So I'm going on, and Holiday, I notified Judge Holiday. Yeah, I never got notice. My attorney never received notice that I had to appear. And in fact, the court document states I didn't have to appear. So then they put a failure to appear, another felony on me to bring another charge, which never was the case at all. I was never told to appear. So I notified Judge Holiday before this had happened that I couldn't appear on my own. I sent her a letter, and I also, my attorney also called her, and they put a failure to appear. Well, I didn't know I thought everything was just fine, and then I sent in notice that my attorney at the time wanted too much money, and I couldn't afford that because it got up to like $150,000 or something crazy. Anyway, I kept driving truck trying to pay the bills personally myself, and I got arrested in Alabama, Gaston, Alabama, and
for the FTA.
Yeah, failure to appear, and they sent me back, extradited me back. I got booked in Navajo County, and I told them, hey, I got a lot of heart issues, and explaining my health, and they just ignored it. Put me up there, which you're aware of, you're a witness to it. I couldn't get my medicines when I needed them. It was just an ongoing battle. At the time I started getting congestive heart failure, and I knew something was wrong because I was swelling up my feet, my legs, and I couldn't hardly breathe. And I kept bringing that to the attention of the attorneys, and it was ignored until Brewer got it, and then Benjamin did something. He said, no, this guy's got to go to the hospital after 8. So, and they sent me over there to the cardiologist 2 weeks at Winslow before I got out, before they released me to the hospital, to my cardiologist. That cardiologist said, oh yeah, we're just switching medication, because he works for the state. We'll just switch a medication and raise it up a little bit and see how you do. Well, I got back. I said, listen, man, I told Benjamin, I said, that guy's an idiot. He didn't even look at me, didn't he? He didn't do no test, nothing. All he did is stood and looked at me and listened to my pulse. And I'm like, he's not a doctor, man. Really? For this kind of issue? You kidding? So, anyway, Judge Van Wyck released me, told me to go to the hospital. The jail still didn't release me. They denied his order and had to go back 2 weeks later, and he yelled at them and told them they better have me released that day. So he asked me, you have somebody who can pick you up? And I said, yeah. And Brad came and got me, drove me to Baywood. They admitted me into the hospital, and the next morning I found out I had congestive heart failure. They started doing a bunch of tests overnight, and he still wasn't sure, but he was, being a doctor, he knew it, but he didn't tell me that. He just said, it's possible you got congestive heart failure, and we could have stopped it and prevented it. So the next day, after all the tests came back, that's when he told me, you have congestive heart failure.
Tell me what happened in jail. Tell me what you saw. Tell me what you heard. Tell me some stories there. Just give me, you know.
I don't remember that one of the young officers, he was in there when we were in there, and he was bringing in drugs left and right. They were having sex with the female inmates down in, I don't know, you remember that with Luna? And she's another guard. She was having sex with old Sergeant, what was his name, that little short,
Yeah.
I can't even remember his name, but
The bulldog.
yeah, and they come in there drunk and running the towers. Yeah, all kind. I mean, guys bringing in cigarettes. You know, cops that work there, staff members bringing in drugs, bringing in liquor. I mean,
Did they steal from the factory, the police? And
oh yeah, you know that. If you looked out the back of your cell window and looked at the fuel tanks, they were filling up personal vehicles all the time. The cops were filling up their own vehicles, sheriff's department. Staff members that work there fill up their own vehicles. I remember,
all on the taxpayer, huh?
all on taxpayer. I distinctly remember watching that all the time at night, watching them pull in, fill up their pickup, take off, and you knew it would. I mean, really? You know. So, and
So
then,
during the day it would be the police cars,
yeah,
and then at night it would be their personal cars.
right. And I remember seeing old Blaine Roden fill up. I seen Brad Carline fill up. I seen, you know, all of them are so deeply involved.
And the court and the jail and everything is attached, right?
Right.
So they're all one giant umbrella of tax theft, basically, is
Tax
what's going
theft.
on.
Yeah, it's all one huge.
And ruining
tax.
lives.
That's what they're doing. They were taking money, not just the gas, but they were taking money left and right from the jails. And when you say how, well, by cheating the tax money, that's what I mean. Is like hours they didn't work, they were able to turn in prison. No, that's very true. And you feel bad for them. A lot of natives,
A lot of Navajo Indians.
Navajo Indians were being abused. Not just them, but everybody, but mostly Navajo Indians, abused left and right.
Because they were poor.
They were poor. I don't remember if you recall on one of them there how they talked about the natives were, the Indians, Navajo tribe were very poor parents. They didn't take care of their children. They called them names, and that was on a letter. I wished I would have kept that. That was on a letterhead actually sent to an inmate who was living on the reservation because his wife was Navajo. And they sent her a letter telling her that they were trashy people and all Indians. They didn't say just them. They said all Indians were trashy people. That came from the judges in the Superior Court and the Child Protective Service. That was stuff they said. And I was like, how can you people sit up here and talk about when you're the criminals and you're treating people this way? It's horrible. And the way you talk about them. And yet you're using everything you can, including their votes, to get your butt in that chair. When I really believe the Native Americans, the Navajo tribe, needs to rethink on the people they help put in office. They need to really research it. And don't listen to their council members. Your council members are selling them down the river. They're lying to them. They're lying to their own people and selling them out to get these people in office because they're all getting money from it. That's something they need to understand. To put a stop to it and get new council members in there and get rid of them people. Got arrested for shoplifting and he got 2 years for it, but he didn't have any defense. He didn't have an attorney. What he had was a public defender who told him that with 2 years in prison was nothing. he could do that very quickly and be right back out. And the guy's telling him, but hey, it's a candy bar. I'm sorry, I'll pay for the candy bar. I didn't have a job, I was hungry. I just wanted something to eat. And he got sent for 2 years. But he's not the only one. There's so many cases while I was there that I don't remember names, but I'm sure we could look them up and find the cases in the time frame I was there. There was another kid that had stolen property in his car, never had a record, not in trouble, and he was just hauling stolen property, which we know it's illegal, yeah. But did he deserve to get 10 years? No, he did not. And he got 10 years. Is that getting tough on crime? No. You just made this kid a felon. He ain't ever going to get a good job now. You created that problem. He had a wife, they just got married, and they were struggling. Did he make a mistake? Absolutely. Am I soft on it? No. I'm saying that it's injustice to do what you did. If you would have said, I'll put him on 3 years probation, it'll be a misdemeanor when you're all done, complete that, and that's one thing. But when you slam him in prison and you just destroyed his whole life, you just created a divorce. You just destroyed a family that was starting.
You just made a welfare recipient.
Yeah, you just made a welfare. And just because you're a judge and you're abusing your discretion, you think you can do that to people? Yeah, well, maybe you can. But what are you going to get in the end when it's your turn? Because that's my point, is I want to watch them get arrested for the crimes they commit. Crimes against humanity, I'll say it again. They've done it over and over. And they intentionally do it. Fraud, fraudulent schemes. They're committing all kinds of fraud by changing case numbers, not turning over discovery, tampering with witnesses, tampering with jurors. I mean, they do it all. The tribal members, everybody out on the reservation, are being abused terribly. So it's your kids, your aunts, your uncles, your sisters, and you better stand up. Because if you don't stop them, they're going to continue to do it. Let's take a look at the percentage of Navajos and Apaches and off these reservations that are in prison right now. Take a look at it. That's what they enjoy doing, is filling the beds in their new jails. And that's basically what they're doing, is filling their jails and prisons with the Navajo, Apache. It doesn't matter what tribe you are. They're using you. They're abusing you. And your council members are allowing it to happen because they've been paid off. You better do your research and take a good look. They're part of Navajo County. And if you really take a good look at everybody there, they're all Democrats. They want to keep out the Republican Party. And if you do some research, you'll find that you need the Republican Party in there to keep this thing on a level basis. You can't continue to have these judges. And what they do is, a lot of them will pretend that they're helping you. In reality, they're stealing from you and lying to you. Your families, it just goes on, and you begin to wonder yourself, when are you going to put a stop to it? So, yeah, let's be realistic and start where it actually needs to be started. By the voting process, people are electing people that don't belong in their politics. Very nasty word. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat. It doesn't matter, because the poison's there. And that's where it starts at the top. We got to get these people out. Get these people held accountable. Get them out. Make your decisions better than what you're doing. Far better. And don't use the excuse that, later on you didn't know about it. Yeah, you did. You know. When you see these people running, you can see it in their face. They got corruption written all over their face. When you start hearing things in the media about somebody, start doing your own research. Be smart enough to check it out. Find out who you're voting for. And there again, if we continue the road we're continuing, you ain't going to clean it up. So don't blame anybody but yourself, which is true. You can't blame anybody but yourself because you put them in office. Get them out. You don't like them, get them out. I hear so much about all these sheriffs and nobody's doing nothing. Well, do something. Do something. Do what we're doing, fighting, and continue to fight it.
No one spends $1 million to get a $150,000 a year job.
No. Why would you do that? What's the motivation for it? You hit it right
Ask
on the
Hillary.
head. Exactly. That's what I mean. It's right. You're hitting it right on the head. Why does a judge take a bench for $145,000 and it cost him, just like you said, $400,000 to get on the seat? Well, he's got to have motivation behind it to get there, right? I mean, that just people use your head.
Can you look out into the parking lot of the court system and go, aha?
Yeah.
And say, oh, look, fucking $70,000 Mercedes.
Exactly.
You know, I know I've got a horrible mouth.
No.
When I talk about this stuff, I get
I do too. I get irate. It's
stabby.
You know, when you really look out into the parking lot and you see, you know what kind of lifestyle they're living, because you've had investigators take a look, and you know it. Then you go, wait a minute. You know, even if they're living modest, don't mean they don't have money. They just ain't spending it because it draws attention, and they're pretty smart to that. They've done it for quite a while. But yeah, you've got a good point there. And a lot of things that they do are just so unethical. They don't deserve to be where they're at, and they need to be in jail. I'm talking about the lives destroyed, families destroyed, and I'm not saying have a bleeding heart when they've committed crimes. I'm saying have compassion and make sure they get justice. Don't let them get railroaded, because when you let them get railroaded, it could be your sister, your uncle, or you next. And let's see how you feel about it, because think about that for a minute. How many times do we always hear down the road somebody that was the first one to stand up and say, oh, they're doing a wonderful job, they're tough on crime, and then they get busted doing something, and they're the first ones to scream, I'm being railroaded. It's all different now.
We see it in politics where the ones that vote for the drug war get busted with cocaine, with tons of cocaine.
Yeah, it's no different. I mean, it's like a person going into a restaurant, lighting up a cigarette, and everybody scatters. Oh, he's smoking! But they all go out in the parking lot and start up their cars that put out so much carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon in the air, but they don't care about doing that damage to people. But they do about that cigarettes. So
let's talk about how we need to get rid of this vested interest of making money off of fabricating crime.
Private prisons, it's got to go. Every state needs to go ahead and pull their ticket, and that starts with the politicians. We've got to get these senators and stuff to pull the tickets and don't let them have a license and shut them down, because you just opened a door for every judge, police officer, prosecutor, because they can invest through family members. They don't even have to invest. They can invest through a friend. And they're all investors. That's why I brought that up. It's a very serious issue. So that's their motivation for putting you in jail, because every bed they fill is a bed not empty, which is a profit.
From tax dollars.
That's right. And think about it. They're double dipping, because they work for the very government, and yet they're supporting the private prison and buying shares. So if the bed's full, they're not only defrauding the taxpayers, they're defrauding the very government they work for. So, and it is fraud, because the job they maintain, they're not allowed to do that, but they're doing it. Absolutely, we can prove it. And they're huge in the investment part of it. And that's pretty bad. That's blood money. Think about it. That's blood money. You had several inmates die in the Navajo County Jail. You had one of the officers that was deliberately set up, his mother-in-law, Sylvia Allen, Senator Sylvia Allen, he was set up on several things and then fired, which, I'll tell you, the corruption is so bad in there because they're all family members in one way or another. They're cousins, aunts, uncles, nephews, whatever, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and they're all so closely knit. They should have been separated years ago. And if they were family members, they shouldn't have been allowed to work at the same courthouse.
So this really is a mafia.
It really is a mafia. Absolutely. It's horrible. I mean, that's why the investigation needed to be done a long time ago. And then during the course of our research, because we all got to talking about it, I realized I found out some really good information back in 2001, 2002, and I think some of 2000, the maintenance yard in Navajo County was raided by the FBI. And everybody there got fired. They were forced to resign or be fired. So I say they're all fired, but of course they resigned. And they were going to be prosecuted, but they worked some kind of deal so they didn't bring all the attention to the county. But that's documented. And they were stealing money from the maintenance yard. And the judges were involved at that time as well. That's legal document proof. I heard the whole rundown because the lady that worked there at the maintenance yard at the time told me the whole story. And she was part of it. And she got fired. And she said, I did nothing wrong, but I knew everybody that was, but it wasn't me. So I just shut my mouth and kept working, but I still have legal documents from when the feds came in. And I thought that was very interesting.
And so the same judges were still on?
Some of them. Nelson was around. Lamb was around. I believe Lamb was around. A bunch of them were there.